We've all been there. We've all had an issue of waking up at 3 a.m. or in the middle of the night and not being able to fall back asleep. Once this becomes a pattern, it becomes really, really difficult to break this. And I've done several other videos on the topic, but what I'm going to share with you today is so very different from anything I've seen online. I've never heard anybody recommend this. I've actually heard the complete and total opposite, but this is something that has made the biggest difference for my sleep. In the past, I've shared in a recent video something that I've done that has really positively impacted my sleep, and it has to do with eating fruit before bed. I definitely recommend watching that video because I'm very, very particular about how I eat it, about what I eat, about how much I eat, and what worked for me. Everybody's going to be different. The other thing that has greatly improved, my sleep cycles is the Luminette Light Therapy Glasses, and I also share that in the same video. So I'm going to link to that video down below. Those methods help me from waking up multiple times a night and help me sleep later. But I've found that I'm still sensitive to things, even though those methods really did help me a lot. I feel like I still wasn't getting enough good sleep. Some people feel great when they're getting 6 hours. I personally do best on closer to 8 hours, and I was not getting that consistently. I've mentioned this in other videos. I've been keeping a very detailed log every single day for close to a year now, in my efforts to try to find solutions and answers to what these sleep issues are. I know there are people out there who are desperate to fix their sleep. So that's why I'm sharing this video today. So before I get into the solution, I do have to share with you basically what I've been eating over the last year. At least you understand what the staples are in my diet. This does change and it varies. Sometimes I have ribs, sometimes I have some chicken, sometimes I have some brats, whatever it may be. But for the most part, over the last year, for whatever reason this has happened, my staple is ground beef and ground chuck. When I do eat this, I had a certain method that I was using when I was making the ground beef or ground chuck. Oftentimes I would use a pound of ground beef and a pound of ground chuck, mix them together. I would cook it in the oven, and I learned this incredible lazy way to cook it in the oven where it could take, at the maximum, it depends how much meat you're using, up to 40 minutes. But what would happen is the meat would go through a process where after about 20 minutes, you would see a lot of grease settling. A lot of the meat would be cooked, or it could be fully cooked by that time, but it would be drenched in grease, sometimes worse than other times. I've been buying the meat from a local farm. Sometimes it's just way fattier than other times. And there are times when this would be like drowning in at least an inch of fat. That's a lot of liquid fat that came out of the ground meat. And what I would do is I would continue cooking this in the oven. It oftentimes wasn't that crazy, like with that amount of fat. A lot of times it was less. I did take some little video clips of when I used to make it like that, so I hope that it'll show how much grease was there, at least at that time. So I would make it, and the longer you cook it, it'll get crispier. And I saw something interesting that would happen because for years, people would tell me to add more fat into what I was eating. Fat is everything. There's people eating sticks of butter. All this stuff sounds crazy, including the amount of fat that I left in with my meat. It sounds crazy too. But people in the keto space and carnivore space often recommend more fat. So you could say that you have any type of issue that you're dealing with, eat more fat, eat more fat, eat more fat. Now, I've had some things happen as a result of this, and as a result of hearing that so much, I felt like it was important to be eating what I was eating, which included a lot of fat. And one issue I had was that my stomach was very sensitive to a lot of different types of fat. So if I made a roast, which I've gone through phases where I ate roast all the time, that liquid fat that was left in the roast, so when I would eat that roast and have the liquid, I would get very, very, very sick. But what I noticed when making the ground beef this way, if I continued to cook it in the oven, all of that fat, or almost all of that fat that it was floating in, would soak back into the meat, and the meat would become very crispy and taste pretty darn good. And it didn't cause me stomach problems to eat the meat in that way, which was a lot higher in fats than if I had drained some of the fat out. And so for the longest time, that's the way I was eating. And I'm not strict carnivore. I did carnivore as an experiment. I know that it works really well for a lot of people, but I've found that I need to add some things in to help with my sleep, to help with my blood sugar. And also just for enjoyment purposes, I've been trying to add foods in for a long time to try to heal my gut. But for the most part, my recent way of eating this, my recent staple is just some ground beef or ground chuck with some lettuce, with some mayo as a little dressing that I make. And also I sometimes put an egg on it. I used to add bacon. Bacon seems to cause me some issues as well with like sinus problems and sleep issues. So watch out for what you're eating because you'd be surprised about the things that can cause you sleep issues. And bacon was one of them for me. So that's my staple food item. Oh, I also, once or twice a day after I eat that meal, especially if I'm still hungry, I will have some coconut milk. It's kind of like coconut cream, and some blueberries or some frozen peaches or whatever kind of low sugar fruit that I have around. And that is really enjoyable. Now, that's how I've been eating. The reason I'm sharing that I was eating this way is because I made a change in the way I was eating and it fixed my sleep. So like I mentioned, I started having issues where my sleep started shortening again, and I wasn't getting that great sleep that I was getting from the other things that I've done in the past that have fixed my sleep. They just weren't working as well. And then more recently, about a few weeks ago or a month ago, I decided to cut down on my fat intake. I don't really know what inspired this, but that's the change that I decided to make. I kept making the ground beef and ground chuck, but once it was cooked through, I would pour off probably 90 to 95% of that excess oil. Since I started doing that, my sleep significantly improved, and that's not all that improved. Lowering other types of fat that I'm taking in did not make a noticeable difference, so cutting down on the fat from the meat is what really made a positive change for me and for my sleep. The other fats in my diet I've left the same. It seems like I was just having an excess amount of fat, and taking in less really made a profound difference. So what I noticed since eating this way with the fatty meat is that over the last year or 6 months probably, I put on some weight. I did weigh, I know this is like not a big deal, but still I want to share this because I noticed my stomach was like really bloated and fatter, and I wasn't fitting in the jeans that I normally would wear, and I couldn't figure out why my stomach was so bloated. And I figured out after draining off the oil, after cutting down on the amount of fat intake, my stomach flattened greatly. And this was very interesting and insightful for me. But basically, I weighed somewhere around 103 in the beginning, and through doing, different experiments and eating this way with the fat included, I ended up weighing closer to like 108 to 110. I was just 110, I was like 108 today, so who knows, it always fluctuates. But basically, like about a month ago, I decided to drain the fat. I leave a little bit, but I drain most of it. And what really, really surprised me by doing this experiment, like I said, is that my stomach flattened. My stomach was no longer bloated, and some of that weight did start coming off a little bit because now I am down a little bit. But forget that. What I noticed right away is that I was sleeping much longer. I was sleeping a full 8 hours, and I was sleeping so solidly, so differently from before. Like I said, I did have other things that really helped my sleep before, and I still think of them as like puzzle pieces, things that are still helping, but I was still very sensitive with my sleep and my sleep issues. And what I noticed is when I've cut down on the fat, I'm no longer deeply sensitive. I don't think I'm easy to wake up anymore, but for the most part, I've noticed like great changes in my sleep duration. I'm overall just sleeping better and sleeping longer, especially if you compare that to how bad things were before. I feel like over time, over the period of me doing all these videos on sleep issues, I have made improvements, but it's like, 7 hours isn't enough for me, which is something that I was getting through the use of the light therapy glasses and eating fruit before bed. And sometimes I'm just like switching it up and not eating ground beef all the time. But even with eating the ground beef, when I drain the fat off, my sleep is so much better. I also avoid bacon because just from tracking everything, I've noticed that it causes me sinus problems. And I wear the Aura ring, which tracks my sleep and my daily things, my heart rate and everything. And it also said that many days when I've eaten bacon, I know this may sound weird to some people, but I was having breathing problems at night. So basically congestion and sinus problems. And so I definitely avoid it at night, but even if I eat it earlier in the day, I often still have these issues, which is sad because everybody loves bacon. But like I said, for the most part, since doing this, my stomach is flatter. It's not bloated. I didn't realize it was hurting kind of with a dull aching pain, probably from the fats. And there are some other changes I've noticed. My sleep duration is longer. And I have also noticed that one thing I was dealing with before, which has been kind of like an up and down problem, is that I would wake up feeling extremely hungry or have to go to the bathroom. And I know this is a common issue for people eating keto or being in ketosis. For whatever reason, whatever the science is behind all of this, I have not had that issue, especially with having to use the restroom right away when waking up. That's gone completely. Like I might need to use it, but it's not like an emergency like it was before. It's been a huge improvement just by cutting down on some of the fat. And I noticed some other changes, so I've got to share this with you guys. I've read some things on Reddit where I read one Reddit post, and I don't know where it is, where someone experienced something that is basically identical to what I'm talking about. I'm not sure if I think they might have been having an issue of weight gain while doing keto or just a stall while being in ketosis. I'm not sure if they were carnivore or not, but he said that he lowered the fat intake and he noticed that he started having keto breath. And keto breath has been a foreign concept for me personally. I never knew what that was. I've heard about it. I'd never experienced it before in my life. And for anybody wondering, some people do have transient sleep issues as they are adapting to the ketogenic way of eating and as they're adapting into ketosis. I am highly fat adapted. I am highly adapted to being in a state of ketosis. My body wants nothing else but for me to be in ketosis. And even if I eat something that is higher carb, I go back into ketosis very quickly. And like I mentioned, I eat some fruit sometimes twice a day. I don't eat massive amounts and I eat certain types. But even with saying that, and even this surprised me, since lowering the fat intake, my level of ketosis on average is 1.5 almost all day long, any time of the day. If I were to increase the fat, which I did this the other day as a single experiment to kind of test things out again before doing this video, I made some ground beef, 1 pound, or ground chuck it was, and I did not drain the fat. And that's what I ate. And you know what? My sleep was horribly impacted and I woke up multiple times and then I finally woke up at 4. It was quite unpleasant. I was very tired the next day and my stomach was bloated again. When I did that though, I tested my ketone levels and they were at 1.8 or 1.9. So that's the only difference I noticed when I really amped up and added in the fats again. It went up to like 1.9. Other than that, based on the way I generally eat, it stays around 1.5 even without the added fat. And one other concern I had was when lowering the fat, I thought I might be like starving all the time, but I'm not. I did notice myself experiencing keto breath, which also was very interesting. It shows that I am burning my own fat, I'm burning my ketones, and I've been having it on and off kind of a lot, which is surprising, is very unexpected. And so I guess it's good. I'm burning whatever fat I have left or whatever fat I gained from eating that way. So I just thought that was interesting. I really wanted to share this with you guys because there are so many people dealing with sleep issues. I know that these 3 a.m. wake ups or whatever time it is could be a result of many different things. It could also be a result of hormone related issues. There are so many different things. Some of us are lacking in certain hormones that we need and tryptophan. I've done videos on this in the past. I just hope that this video might be helpful to some of you out there. If it's something that you want to experiment with, I'd love to hear if anybody out there is experiencing something similar or if you have similar results to what I've experienced here. I don't know how long this is going to help me for. It seems like I've discovered certain things that truly help me and they might help for a little while and they help some of you. I've read so many comments where people did discover that eating a little bit of carbohydrates before bed helped them. That's not going to work for everybody. This might not work for everybody, but I do really hope that it helps some of you out there if this is something that you just never thought of trying, because I never thought this was something I should try before, because it's so ingrained in us that you're supposed to be adding in more fats. But for some people, there's a limit, and we need to figure out, like what that limit is for us, and figure out ways to optimize our sleep. So if your sleep is falling apart, I definitely recommend giving this a try and seeing if it's helpful or not. If you found other ways that have helped you improve your sleep issues, please share that down below in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.